Hey guys, welcome back to 5th grade Math Lands. I have some math tools here today, some odd math tools. I have coffee. That's not really a math tool, it's more of a me tool. All right, so I made strawberry cobbler. We spent last week, I know one day we talked about problems with my buckets of strawberries that I had bought. And I used some of those to make some strawberry cobbler. And let me tell you, it was amazing. So right now, I have some strawberry cobbler left. I want you to think about what fraction of my pan is left. It smells so good. So if you said that I have about 1/4 of a pan left, you are correct. So let's go back in time and think about our strawberries from last week. I had bought buckets, and each bucket weighed a certain amount, right? So we were thinking about equal groups of pounds to go with my buckets of strawberries, right? So if each bucket weighed 2 pounds, and I had 3 buckets, this one was 2 pounds, this one was 2 pounds, this one was 2 pounds, okay? So we're still going to be thinking about multiplication problems that are equal groups today. But our groups are going to be fractional, okay? So if I have 1/4 of a cobbler, I wish I could send this over smell-o-vision. If I had 1/4 of a cobbler and I had 3 equal groups of that 1/4, how much cobbler would I have? So let's think about that. 3 equal groups of 1/4. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4. So that would be 3/4, right? All right. But what if I had 1/2 of a group of this 1/4? 1/2 of a group of this 1/4. So I'm thinking about how I can show that, okay? So I like to use paper to do this. We used a lot of paper last week with our fractions. So I'm going to be doing the same this week, but I'm going to be doing some coloring with this, some paper folding and some coloring. So if you want to do this along with me, it would be a good idea to have a couple different colored markers. So if you go back and watch this later, you can grab those things. So I have 1/4 of a strawberry cobbler, and I want to find out what 1/2 of a group would look like. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my 1/4 of a strawberry cobbler. To do that, I'm going to fold my paper in half, and I'm going to fold it in half again because that gives me 4 equal parts. Now I'm going to take one of my colors, and it might be easier for you to see where the folds are, to go over that with a crayon or a marker. And I'm going to color in 1/4 of my strawberry cobbler. Okay, so now I want to know what 1/2 of this would be. Okay, so I noticed that my folds, my lines where I folded have gone vertical, so I'm going to do my half a different way. So I'm going to turn my paper and fold it in half, maybe. All right, I'm going to switch colors. All right, so if you focus on my blue line, I have half here and half here. So I want to know what half of a group of 1/4 of a cobbler would be, okay? Now, there's different ways that you can do this, but I like to color in that whole half, okay? And then I'll show you how I find that answer in just a second. Now, when I'm coloring this, I am not sitting and coloring it perfectly. As a matter of fact, I'm coloring my counter a little bit. I'll have to clean that up later. Okay, so I'm going to bring this where you can see it. So I've colored my 1/4 of my strawberry cobbler, And then I colored my half. Now, my question was, what if I have half of a group of 1/4 of a strawberry cobbler? Okay. So 1/2 of a group of 1/4 of a strawberry cobbler, I'm going to look at where both colors are. How many rectangles, how many sections of my paper have both red and blue in it? So I have one. Okay. How many parts is my paper divided into or partitioned into? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. So I just did 1/2 of a group of 1/4 of a strawberry cobbler. And what I did was this multiplication problem. 1/2 of a group of 1/4 equals 1/8. Because just a minute ago we were talking about if we had 3 groups of 1/4 would be 3/4. So we're thinking about it the same way. We're thinking about it as a multiplication problem. Okay? So let's keep thinking about that strawberry cobbler. I'm trying to make you very, very hungry today. And let's pretend this time, we're going to have to pretend a little bit because I really only have 1/4 of a cobbler. But what if I had half of a cobbler? So I'm going to take my paper. This is going to represent my cobbler. So I have half of a cobbler. Right here, I'm using red to represent my strawberries. I'm going to color in half of a cobbler. Boom, baby, half of a cobbler. All right, so I've got half of a cobbler. What if I have 3/4 of a group of this? 3/4 of a group. What would you do? Think about that. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to fold it into fourths. I want to partition it into fourths the opposite way. I'll show you what I mean. Who knew math was so much paper folding? So I want you to look at my blue lines, and you'll notice that I have one, that's 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, okay? So if you look at my blue lines, I've split it into 4 equal parts. Now, I want to know what 3/4 of my half of a cobbler would be. So the way I like to do it is to color in 3/4. I'm going to color all the way down. Try not to color my counter. All right, I have colored in 3/4. Now, to figure out what part of the cobbler I have, if I have 3/4 of it, 3/4 of 1/2 of it, I want to look at the parts that have both colors. So I have 1, 2, 3 boxes that have both colors, okay? So I have 3 boxes out of how many? There's 8. So if I have 3/4 of a group of 1/2 of a cobbler, or 3/4 of 1/2, that would be 3/8. So 3/4 of a group of 1/2 equals 3/8. All right, so that's what my model shows right there. Okay, let's get a sip of coffee and do another one. You ready? All right, we're good to go now. All right, so what if I have 1/3 of a cobbler? That's sad. 1/3 of a cobbler. So I'm going to fold my paper into 3 parts. Thirds are always the hardest to fold it into. We know that when we have fractions, we're talking about equal parts. But when we're folding, I always tell my kiddos not to get too stressed out. We're going to get it as close as we can, but we're not perfect, okay? I have 1/3 of a cobbler. I want to know what 1/4 of a group of that third would be. 1/4 of my 1/3 of a cobbler that's left over. Think about what you would do. All right, so I am going to fold this into doing 1/4. So I want to fold it into 4 parts. So you can see in blue, I've got 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. Let me color in one of those fourths. All right. So remember, we're looking at one part has both colors, okay? And there's how many sections altogether? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 1/12. So 1/4 of 1/3 equals 1/12 of a cobbler. All right. So let's try one more. Okay. So for this one, I realized that I really liked cobbler for this one and that all you people were going to come help me eat it. Okay. So what I did is I have 1 1/2 cobbler left over. So I made a bunch of them. So 1 1/2. I'm going to go ahead and fold both of them into 1/2. All right. I'm going to use a black line to show this. Just help me to see it better. So I have 1 whole cobbler. Remember, I am not worried about my coloring being beautiful. And I have half of another. And I'm coloring the counter with my red marker again. All right. 1 1/2 cobbler right here. Okay? Now, 2/3 of that. If I have 2/3 of a group of that, one thing that I can do is I can fold it into thirds that opposite way. Do it on this one as well. All right. And I want to color in. So I've got my thirds, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. I did it on this one as well. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. And I want to know 2/3 of it, so I'm going to color it in. There's 1/3, 2/3. And I'm going to do that on both of them. All right. Let's take a look. So on this one, I've got both colors in 1, 2, 3, 4 sections, right? How many parts is this whole cobbler partitioned into now? 6. So right here, I've got 4/6. Look at this one. I've got 2 more 6 that have both colors. So I have 4/6, 5/6, 6/6. What do you know about 6/6? It's a whole, right? So 2/3 of 1 1/2 is 1 whole. All right, guys. So that was a whirlwind of paper folding, cobbler making, right? And if you have other strategies for doing that's fine. But this is a strategy that I like to use, okay? So I'm going to leave you with a problem to try on your own. So we're going to think about that strawberry cobbler. And I'm going to write it in words also. All right, so your problem is this. The problem is 2/3 times 3/4. You can think about it like this. You have 3/4 of a cobbler, and I want to know what 2/3 of a group of that cobbler would look like. So 2/3 groups of 3/4 of a cobbler, okay? So I'd love to hear about your answer. If you're one of mine, you can email it to me. You can send it through Dojo, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.